Today we're going to look at how to make a drawstring gift bag. This is a great beginner project, and if you've already done the first few videos in my Learn to Sew course, then this is a great project to learn some construction techniques, how to finish raw edges, and actually have a finished product when we're done. We will learn how to box the corners like this here so that our bag will stand up with a bigger item inside of it. We'll learn several different techniques on how to finish the raw edges on the inside of our bag. And we'll learn how to thread something through a casing, which will be a great skill to know for if you need to insert elastic or drawstrings into other projects. Now you can make this bag any size that you want. So the measurements are not super important. Just imagine the bag that you want, make the height of it just a little bit more because we are going to fold this over several times to create a hem and a casing for your drawstrings. So get your fabric. This is a great project for cotton, flannel, and canvas. You're going to need something for your drawstring. So I've got this cotton rope. You could also use a polyester rope. If you don't have that on hand, you could cut a strip of knit fabric out about 1 inch thick and then stretch it out so that it curls over on itself. If you don't have knit fabric, you could even tear a shred off of an old t-shirt. If you don't have any of those, you can just cut a long strip of fabric that is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide by the width of your fabric, and I'll show you how to create your own drawstring. If you are an absolute beginner, be sure to grab my ebook down below with 10 tips to sew like a pro, and make sure you go back and watch the first couple of Learn to Sew videos with basic techniques of how to thread your machine, how to create a hem, and how to sew stitches. Also be sure to check out my PDF with 15 different ways to use these drawstring bags. I will link that down below so you can take a look. Now let's get sewing. I recommend having a ruler and a rotary cutter, although that's not necessary if you have some good fabric scissors. In order to do the pinking technique, you will need pinking shears, which are fabric scissors that have this zigzag edge. Craft scissors, but they are extra sharp so that they can cut the fabric in that shape. You'll need a marking tool and pins. A lot of times I'll say you can have pins or clips. In this project, I recommend having pins specifically. Okay, the first thing that you want to do is cut out your fabric. And you want 2 pieces the same size. And just imagine that this is the size of your finished pouch, and add about 2 inches to the top because we are going to fold that over to create the casing. So I just want to make a small little bag that one of my girls could use to keep in her purse or to take on a trip. So I need 2 of those pieces. And before we put anything together, first we're going to hem one short edge of both pieces of fabric. So to do that, you can use my hem guide, which I'll link down below. You can get a free printable for that, or you can just eyeball it. You just want to fold over about 1/4 inch and press that, and then fold it a second time and press that. And we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew very close to this bottom edge to hem that edge up so that it's nice and neat and there's no flaps of fabric to get caught on our drawstring whenever we get ready to thread it through the casing. Okay, we've got that pinned. Let's go and do a straight stitch at about 2.5 millimeters in length from start to finish. And this does not have to be back stitched at the beginning or the end, but you can if you want to. Okay, once we've got one short edge of both pieces hemmed up, we're going to trim all of these threads off so they don't get caught in any of our other seams. And then we want to put these pretty sides together, lining up all of the edges as best we can. Now, I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to measure 2 inches down from this top edge and make a mark because we don't want to start sewing up here because that would close up our casing. We want to leave that open so when we fold up our casing, we still have an open edge there to feed our drawstring through. So we want to measure down 2 inches from that top edge and just make a mark. That is where we want to start and stop sewing. So I want to back stitch here down to the corner, pivot across the bottom, pivot back up, stop at this line, and back stitch again. You can put a few pins in this if you need to, just to hold everything together nicely. And then we will take that to the sewing machine and we will stitch that up. Okay, now we have back stitch, sewn the 3 edges, and back stitch again. We want to trim all of those threads off. And then at this point, we want to look at a couple of different ways on how to finish these raw edges. We can take our pinking shears, and I'll do it across the bottom. We can simply apply the pinking, very careful not to cut through our stitches. And this cuts the fabric in a way that it's much less likely to unravel because it's cut each thread on the bias. So that's a great way, without using any other special tools, just to invest in a good pair of pinking shears. The next way is to do a wide but short zigzag stitch that goes across the seam allowance and just over the edge each time it zigzags. And that will secure all of those threads on the edge so that they don't unravel. So we'll do that down both sides so that you can see how to finish the raw edges with a zigzag stitch. Starting where we back stitch at our 2-inch mark, I'm going to lower my presser foot, and I want to orient it where when the needle comes down on the right side, it just touches the edge of the fabric or even just goes off of the fabric. And I will take a few stitches and back stitch, and then stitch down the edge, securing the raw edges of these pieces of fabric. We're going to take the hemmed edges, fold it down to the top of those stitch lines, and that's going to create our casing for our drawstring. Now you'll notice that there are still raw edges here on the edges of our casing, so we want to do something about that. So what I like to do is take my scissors, and just above where I back stitch, I'm just going to make a small snip into the fabric. You certainly don't have to do this. You can make it work without the snip, but that is going to allow me to fold this edge in so that now I have a finished edge there. And then when I fold this hem down, I have this nice folded over edge with no raw edges showing, and I've got this nice neat hem to create a casing for the drawstring. So I'm going to carefully pin this down and make sure all of those layers stay in place. Open this up. I'm going to fold this raw edge over. You can take it to the iron and press that if you would like. I'm going to fold this hem down to match up with my back stitches. Crease that hem down. And make sure that we're not pinning through all of these layers. We only want to be pinning through the top 2 pieces because we don't want to sew the bag shut. We just want to sew the casing shut. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over and repeat that process here on this side of our bag. So since we already made that cut, again, we will fold that over and fold our hem down to the top of our back stitching. And again, be sure that you don't pin through that bottom layer, just through this side of the bag to secure this portion of the casing. Repeat that again. Now we will take this to the machine, and with a straight stitch, we're going to stitch as close as we can to this bottom edge. And we want to open this up and slide this over our machine so that we're only stitching through these layers. When we get to this corner, you can just push this seam allowance one way or the other and go ahead and just continue sewing straight over that all the way around. And do that again when we get here. Just continue sewing over the gap. And we want to back stitch at the beginning and end of that. Now you can go ahead and remove your storage piece to expose your free arm for this project. That way you can slip the whole project over your free arm. And that'll make it a lot easier to make sure you're not sewing through all of those layers and closing your bag up. No matter how you've chosen to finish your raw edges, installing the drawstrings is going to be the same process. Now for your drawstrings, you want to take a measurement that is 2 times the width here, plus about 4 inches. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, and then add about 4 inches there, and that's gonna be the length that I need for my drawstring. Now, if you don't have this drawstring, or if you can't find it, or if you just don't wanna spend the money on it, you could also grab an old t-shirt or some knit fabric and cut about a 1-inch strip. You're gonna take both ends and tug it, and when you do, it's going to curl over on itself and create a drawstring for you. And then you want to take that same measurement, about 2 times plus a few inches. I'm actually not going to cut that down because that's not worth wasting. So you can create your 2 drawstrings that way, and you do need 2 for this. Or if you don't have any knit fabric and you don't have any drawstring, you can cut a 1-inch wide piece of fabric. We're going to cut it the width that we need. Let's do that again. We're going to cut it twice the width of our bag, plus about another 4 inches. And you could close this up one of 2 ways. You could fold it in half and press that and then open it back up, and then fold both raw edges in and press it, and then fold that up and then stitch down that opening. Or the quick and easy way is actually what I like to do, since it's just a drawstring, is just fold it into thirds. So fold one edge over, and when you fold the second edge over, make sure that it covers up that first raw edge, and then just run a wide zigzag stitch all the way down that drawstring. For this project, I'm going to use my knit drawstrings. I'm going to turn my whole project right side out. And then I'm going to take my safety pin or a bodkin, which I'll link below. That's a really neat tool that my children have lost, so I don't have it. So I will take my safety pin and I am going to attach it to one end of my drawstring. I'm going to make sure I get a couple layers of fabric just so I don't tear it. I'm going to close that up. And then from one side, you see I have 2 holes here. I'm going to go ahead and insert this into the casing. And I'm going to thread it through all the way to the other side. Just scrunch that fabric up. You can feel that safety pin in there, and scrunch the fabric over it. When I get to the opening, I am going to just cross the opening and thread it into the other side of the casing. And then when it comes out, I'm going to stretch that and match up the ends. And then remove my safety pin. And now we're going to do the second drawstring. And we want to start on the opposite side. So we want to make sure that these ends of our drawstring point the opposite direction. So we're going to run it through the casing all the way around the top, but we're going to start on this side instead. And we're going to feed this all the way through the casing. Remove that safety pin. And now you want to grab all of your raw ends and you want to pull and make sure that it cinches your drawstring bag up. If it doesn't, pull them out and try again, and make sure that the 2 ends point opposite directions for each drawstring that you insert. Now, once you've got these in and you're sure that it will draw the bag up and that it will open back up, we're going to cut these ends evenly and then go ahead and tie them together so that they don't pull back into the casing and get lost. So to do that, I'm just going to take that and trim it. I'm going to pinch both of them together, wrap them around 2 fingers, and then take these edges, or take these ends, tuck them under, and slide it off of my fingers. And then I have these 2 ends here that I can pinch, and then I'm going to slide it down towards the end of the drawstrings. And there you go. You've got your 2 drawstrings threaded, and when you pull on them, it cinches it up. The last thing that we're going to look at is how to box the corners on your drawstring bag. Now, to box the corners on the bottom of our bag, we're going to turn it inside out again. And we're going to pull the 2 layers apart. And we want to align this bottom stitch with this side stitch going down the center of the fabric. So we've got this stitch here and this stitch here. And you can actually use your fingers to kind of feel the seam through the fabric and get that lined up. And before I measure, I like to go ahead and stick a pin through here just so that nothing is shifting on me. And then we're going to take our ruler and we want to measure about 1.5 inches from this corner tip down here along the seam line. So line that up at about 1.5 inches. And that is where we want to draw the line straight across here. So I'm going to take that and line my ruler up. And it looks like my pen is in the way. I'm going to mark that. Make sure I have it pinned really well. And I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to sew straight across this corner. And then I want to repeat that on the other side. I want to pull the 2 layers apart. Line up the seam allowances so that this seam aligns with this seam. Measure from the tip 1.5 inches up and draw a line. And then I'll sew across that to box the corners. Okay, you can see on this bag here where I have sewn that line that I just measured, and you sort of create this triangle shaped tab on either side of the bottom of your bag. And you'll see this is what it looks like going down the side. Now we're going to leave those there because when they fold in, they're going to give a little more stability to the bottom of your bag. Go ahead and turn it right side out again. And you can push out those edges. And now you'll see that you've got this boxed bottom where your bag will stand up a little bit better and have a little more structure to it. And that is how you create boxed corners on a bag.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, I hope that you will hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss one of my sewing tutorials. Join us 3 times a week when we post new videos. Mondays are sewing tutorials, Wednesdays are homesteading and homemaking, and Fridays are aviation and ministry.